Hi, everyone. I'm Tevis. Welcome to Game Changer Chats. I'm super excited to be here with you for another conversation. This week, I'm talking to Michael Schein, and Michael is the author of the Hype Handbook, 12 Indispensable Success Secrets from the world's greatest propagandists, self-promoters, cult leaders, mischief makers, and boundary breakers. So before I draw him into this bowl of soup that we make of ideas and flavors and things for people to suck down, I'm going to take one quick tech break, and that is to tell you that if you were simulcasting over YouTube, over Insta, over Facebook, and LinkedIn, and if you have a question or comment, please do weigh in. We would love to hear from you. If for some reason we don't answer live on screen, it probably means that it has not come through the feed. So if that's the case, not to fear, because Michael and I both solemnly swear that we will circle back and we will check and see what you commented on or asked about. Anyway, so thank you so much for joining me, Michael.
It is a pleasure to be here with you and to be on your show. This is exciting.
Thank you so much. Well, so we're going to start as I always love to start. What was your favorite thing to do as a young one?
Depends how young, but it's funny. I always liked to write, if you could call it writing, even when I was really little. I mean, I loved to read. I read little books, like, and whatever I could get my hands on, everything from movie adaptations to like books about androids. There was this one.
Androids?
Yeah, I remember there was this book called Not Quite Human, about this family who built an android, and it was like part of the family. I don't know, like that series. But I used to write little stories. I had this little book that I got for my birthday, this leather-bound book. I still have it at my mom's house whenever I go there. And I read really early. So yeah, I would sit around and write these little stories. But then I did all the other stuff that little kids do: run around, play with toys, all that as well. Go outside.
Well, fast forward. So you found your way into corporate America, right? And when you found your way into corporate America, what was the trajectory? Were your parents corporate folks? Were you the outlier that you pivoted and made the right turn? I was the outlier, so I love to understand this stuff.
Yeah, my dad was a business guy. I mean, he owned his own business, but he was very, very like business oriented. And yeah, well, sort of. I mean, he was an entrepreneur. So I guess he was creative in that way, but he's like the kind of person, he doesn't even understand the concept of art for art's sake. Like, if a buck can't be made out of an activity, there's like no purpose,
Profit motive. Yeah.
Very much so. So yeah, I mean, I guess where I was an outlier was that I very much care about art for art's sake, although I have a commercial sort of mindset.
Yeah,
it's funny. I'm not really a believer in horoscopes, but like I am everything my sign is, so I don't really understand that.
Don't you hate that? It's like, you want to be a cynic, but
yeah,
and it resonates, right?
Right. So anyway, something they say about cancers, which is me, is that they're artistic but with a commercial bent. So that's very much me. But anyway, like I left college, and I told my parents I was going to start a band in New York, and my mom likes everything I do. She's my biggest fan, but my dad was not happy.
We all need one of those.
Yeah. My dad thought I was an idiot, and but we did okay. We actually did pretty well. I played with guys better than me musically. I wrote all the songs, and we were very
What was your band's name?
So we were called The Act. Yeah, pretty straight ahead.
Would we know a song?
No, the band was already taken. So we were The Act. No, you wouldn't know a song, but we used to sell out Arlene's Grocery a lot, which is a pretty well-known club. It's small, but the Strokes got its start there, and it was around the same time, and we had a residency there, and I don't know.
Residency.
Yeah,
that's
now
pretty sexy.
Yeah, it was cool, and we an all ages residency, because that was what we started. Which was what we wanted. I mean, we wanted kids liking us. The Strokes, everyone kind of nodded their head.
right.
Yeah, like our
Longevity.
yeah, it
Get
was
'em.
that get them young. But also, I don't know. I feel like I was never as big a music fan as when I was 15 years old.
Mhm.
And a lot of these 20 something bands, it was like about being cool. And in our shows, people would like, mosh and go crazy. And it was cool. Yeah, we were on the cover of New York Press, which was an old alternative newspaper in New York. We were on Showtime at the Apollo, which we
Wow.
got on for the specific purpose of being booed off, and it worked. So
So
anyway,
that was an early hype move.
all of it was. So that was the thing. I mean, I don't know that the talent was all the way there, but we were really good at hyping ourselves up. And we used to use that term. I mean, I didn't know from marketing. We would say, let's hype up this show. And we would do all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah.
So how did you start to learn about the marketing angle? Like, I get it that your dad was always, and you had art. He had business, you had art. Somehow that converged in you, because that's basically a definition of marketing. It's art and business, right?
That's what I do now. But it's funny. I never would have used the term marketing. I think it's really because of the kind of art that I like. Like, I've never really been interested in lowercase a art, not visual art, but any kind of art that just exists, like a pretty picture that just exists to be beautiful. Like, I don't care about that. I never thought of it this way at the time, but I always liked like bands and books and art that where like the hype was part of the art. So like I liked Bowie more than the Grateful Dead, or Malcolm McLaren with the Sex Pistols, or Warhol. I thought that the activity around the art, like, who cares about the painting of a Campbell soup can? It's not that the painting is beautiful. It's like what that Campbell soup can says about society, but also the conversations that were sparked around the Campbell soup can. So I think, to me, I never saw a distinction. Like, to me, like, the cynical way of doing it is creating something and then saying, how can we hawk this product? For me, it was like, you want to make a splash, you want to communicate, you want to get people riled up, right? And the best way to do that is what you're calling marketing, what I call hype. So I guess it was just sort of what I was interested in always. I don't know where that comes from.
Well, I feel like this is such a timely conversation. I mean, because we are living in a world that is driven by hype. But just even case in point, you brought up the musical examples. I mean, Sinead O'Connor is coming out with a new memoir. And I have to say it that way. Come on, that was fun. How often do I get to do that?
I actually went to dinner with someone who actually ordered a glass of Pinot Noir. I had never heard that. Noir, yeah, I'd never heard that in my life.
We went down a rabbit hole on that one.
Yeah.
So she was talking about how in the eyes of the world, she blew up her career the minute she ripped up the photo of the Pope. And she said, no, I reclaimed my life, right? Which is kind of a different, the hype around her, she allowed herself to take control of it so that she could set herself free. Now, this is kind of an interesting code switch, right? Because so much of the use of hype is to ensnare, is to earn loyalty, to grab the dollars and the hearts of others, right? And I think this is a really important conversation above and beyond how much hype has been used throughout history to determine the winners and the losers, etc. But I think it's really important because all of us have a vehicle for hype now in a way that has probably never existed.
That's true. Ever. Yeah, I agree.
So abundantly. So I'm gonna just read a little quote. I've never done this on my little live stream before. It's kind of fun.
It's like a reading.
The human animal, right? The human animal is not rational. We make decisions based on emotions and mental fallacies and then justify our choices afterwards. So here's my message to you, your message to them, right? If you are a business owner, entrepreneur, executive artist, activist, or thinker who can honestly say that you are trying, truly trying to make the world a better place, it is your moral imperative to learn how to harness raw emotion and irrational thinking to your benefit. You must come to understand how people really make their decisions, why they really get excited, and why they really choose to follow some people over others. Because as you point out throughout the book, it's not talent, it's not quality, right? Then you must use your understanding of these principles for good. Because I know a lot of us see hype, right? We see it out there, and it makes us a little squeamish. Can you talk about what you learned about our squeamishness around hype?
Yeah, there's so much here. I'm really glad you picked out that passage, and in some ways it's why the work that went into this book became a labor of love instead of just a business book I was writing to, support my agency. Because so there's a group of people, a group of psychological disorders that can be grouped as antisocial personality disorder.
Mhm.
And these include psychopathy, psychopathy, sociopathy, and like really extreme narcissism. And they've done experiments where they put these kind of people in a like an experimental setting, in a lab setting, and kind of manufactured interpersonal stress.
Mhm.
And they found their heart rates don't go up.
Wow.
So what does that mean? It means that these kinds of people are very good at taking the emotion out of the equation.
Yeah.
Whereas the rest of us, we get nervous, we have extreme empathy, we put ourselves in other shoes, and that's usually a good thing. But in this circumstance, this is what's going on. Because we see these antisocial people who, in the common sort of language, we just consider bad people, we see them manipulating and using these strategies where they're taking advantage of, how people behave in groups, how irrational we are. We automatically assume that those strategies are essentially bad.
Mhm.
But it's really just that those people know how to take action without letting their emotions get in the way. And as a result, it's all the bad people hawking garbage and harmful stuff that are very natural at doing that. They don't need my help, right? Now, I would be convinced that those strategies are negative, except for the fact that there are a lot of really, really good people who have done really good things. Not as many as the bad people, but enough to realize that it's not about morality. So Martin Luther King used the same strategies. He drew lines in the sand. He manufactured momentum. He used theatricality, as cult leaders do, but for a very beneficial cause. Richard Branson, is he one of the great people in the world? I don't know, but he's a pretty moral business person who delivers a good product. He uses a lot of this stuff. So what I'm saying is the strategies in themselves are amoral and they work no matter what, because that's how our brains work. We're on this planet to spread our genes and survive, not to see the world accurately from a scientific evolutionary perspective.
Wow.
I
Not
don't,
to see the world accurately. That was like a mind bomb.
it's true, because if we saw the world as it really was,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be able to move. The amount of stimuli that you're bombarded with all day long, it's impossible, So we have mental shortcuts, and that's what magicians take advantage of. That we don't see things accurately. So my whole purpose is that, listen, if we can accept as a given that this stuff is neither moral nor immoral, it's just the way people are. I want to put this stuff in the hands of the good guys, because there are all these people who feel squeamish because they see all these narcissists and sociopaths using this, and they say to themselves, well, I'm not going to be like them. And as a result, all the nasty causes and nasty ideas keep getting traction, and all the good stuff keeps getting left behind. And that's where you hear things, the cream will rise to the top, et cetera, et cetera. No, it just won't,
Yeah, because it'll get crowded out.
Right.
I've been thinking a lot about how it's almost like there's a code, right? Of morality, of behavior, right?
Right.
And if you're a good person, and everyone tends to think they are good people, but it's very true.
Even Hitler thought he was a good person. He
Yeah,
was
very
making
rarely.
a new world order and this and that. Yeah.
Yeah, he was taking it for the team, apparently.
Yeah. Right.
So, but when we say to ourselves, no, I'm just gonna do my best, and if it's good, then I'll be recognized for it, and we go, the path of just hard work, and recognition will come. Okay, so that's one path. Then there's this path. No, you got to twist, you got to bend, you got to find your hype, you got to find your angle, you got to use fear, you have to create dependency, right? Like a lot of the elements that you're talking about, right? That you draw a line in the sand, you create momentum, right? You feed it, et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking about this idea of code switching, right? Like they're two different codes, like they're two different algorithms almost
Yeah.
culturally, right? And I was thinking about what you are doing is you're not code switching, you're code bridging.
Thank you. I'm going to use that. That's exactly. I was just going to say they don't have to be a code switch.
Exactly.
People make them a code switch. Yeah, exactly. That's a really good paradigm. I really like that.
False dichotomy.
It is a completely false dichotomy.
Yeah, I'm a fan of pointing out the false dichotomies, because any algorithm you can continue to add code onto, right? It can be recoded. It can be like, that's part of the beauty.
So true. Yeah.
Of thinking of neurological patterns is patterns all exist, but they're also elastic, right? And like, I feel that way about the game change idea. The idea that you can be true to yourself and kick ass and do great in business. Like, we're kind of talking about the same thing, only you're doing it
right
through the paradigm of hype, and I'm doing it through the paradigm of who the heck are you and why aren't you bringing it into your life more consistently?
I have so much to say about this. I mean, first of all, I've known you for a while, and I've known about your ideas for a while, and they're very good. And it's exactly that. People make this false dichotomy that I'm going to follow my bliss, follow my dreams, go live on the beach and meditate and this and that, or I'm going to be a hard driving, work till I drop money person, and there's no time for that. And why do those have to exist separately, right? And that's been your whole idea. And, it's funny. You can use the nastiest sounding one of these hype strategies, right? Okay, so create enemies. That's one of the things that I talk about. Who would want to do that? I would never want to create an enemy. That's disgusting. I'd rather not have my ideas be seen. Okay. Well, the reality is human beings, for various biological reasons that we can talk about or not talk about, are very wired to think tribally. Everyone, the most mellow person on earth and the nastiest person on earth, we all do, right? So you can ignore that. But does an enemy have to be a person? We associate that with cults and with nationalism, but take the example of Basecamp, right? And I talk about this in the book. That's a project management tool, boring industry, I guess. But project management tools are this technology, for those of the audience who don't deal with this stuff every day, that, organizations use to manage their workflows, right? So usually these project management tools have all kinds of functions and bells and whistles because that's what clients want. And the thing about Basecamp is that it doesn't have many. It does like 5 things. So it's simple. So they could have gone out into the world and say, hey, we have a simple project management tool. Okay. What they did instead is they wrote a book called Rework that basically says overwork and over complexity is a negative. It's harming the world and it's harming you. Oh, by the way, we have this tool that lets you do that. So they have a tribe around them. But what a great war to fight. I mean, is that a bad thing? They picked a fight with the idea of workaholism and over complexity. And so sometimes the best thing, and as a result, they've changed a lot of people. A lot of people use the rework model now.
Yeah.
So all of these things can really be used for extreme good. and extreme nastiness, but one way or the other, they exist. It's totally a false dichotomy. The code switching is manufactured. That's our own hangups.
Yeah. So I was talking to a colleague, right? His name's Shomik Banerjee. He lives in Atlanta, and he runs a think tank called the Leaders Lounge, and it's amazing. He gets top leaders from amazing companies, mostly greater than 2,000 employees, and it's a think tank, it's a gathering, right, etc. And we were talking about how he gets attention, and we were talking about how because I brought up the fear, the aspect of how do you leverage fear to get people's attention, right?
Yeah.
And we were sitting with that, and people right now have fear fatigue, I think. Like,
that's
everyone's
probably a little
been
bit
afraid
true at this
for
point.
so long, and
like, I actually think I'm more courageous than I used to be, because I'm not a particularly brave person, but I'm so tired of being afraid all the time for my health and for this and for that, that I've just kind of been like, whatever, you know? Like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you throw it to the wind.
I know.
So we were talking about in the event space, or like in the professional services space, because I imagine that there's a lot of people who could learn from the ideas. I know I can, and I've known you for forever, and you've been talking about this stuff for forever to me, and I'm like, okay, I really need to act on that. I really, I'm going to take classes. Let's everyone go into Facebook and LinkedIn and say, I want to take a class with Michael.
Sure. Enough of you guys do it, I'll be there.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess my question is, when we get a sense that instilling a false fear, like, oh, you don't want to miss out, oh, right, like this FOMO thing or whatever, like, what do we do to get people's attention?
I want to sort of
play the fear card.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly, I think what people do is they confuse the tactics and the deep psychological principles. I'm talking about crowd psychology, like stuff that I didn't use this example in the book, but the Emperor Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, used some of these strategies, right? So
Tell me more. I love this stuff. Tell me more. What did he do?
Well, just, the Aeneid, which is like the biggest, most famous poem in Latin. He was the first emperor, which basically means he was a dictator. He overthrew the republic and made himself emperor. So he needed to legitimize his rule. So he wove a story. He had the best poet in Rome write this epic poem that basically legitimized his rule. It was like they came from Troy and, the Roman people. I mean, he just basically wove this poem that made the logical inheritor the emperor.
He used manipulating the narrative,
theatricality, storytelling. Exactly. Right. So this stuff is old. Myth making. The older epic poems, no one really knew who wrote them. No one knows who Homer was. He commissioned this thing. It's like commissioning Top Gun to legitimize the Cold War. You know what I mean? So where was I going with this? I guess what I wanted to say, so there's that kind of stuff. That stuff is so deep. I mean, you have to understand those dynamics. But when people do stuff like buy now, it's running out, what they're doing is they're copying the tactics, and we're very tired of the tactics. So like, everyone knows that that's BS because we've seen it with those words 800 times. There's this guy, Russell Brunson, who is really good. He's a good marketer, but he sells this thing called ClickFunnels, which is a great product. The problem is it has this ticking clock for webinars. I think it's
a lot of them do.
It's all from this one tool. So because Russell Brunson made it work, everyone thinks that if they do the same thing Russell Brunson does, it's going to succeed. But after a while, you get fatigue. Everyone knows. So what I would sort of challenge people to do is stop modeling to the letter these tactics, the 1, 2, 3, 4 sales funnels, the ABCD test, because once someone has written a book about those tactics or launched a course, you can learn from it. But if you try to copy it thing by thing, it's already too late. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I would say is get familiar with the psychology of how how this thing I'm calling hype works, or marketing, or mass. It's just a different orientation.
Well, I think this is so important because you cannot spend time online and not get pounded by
Right.
people telling you, if you just buy my thing or sign up for my
That's it.
course or whatever, your life is going to be perfect. And everything that you've been working for that has eluded you up until now, I know how to get for you.
Yeah, follow this formula with these
Yeah.
landing pages and you're going to make it. Well, now, does that mean you can't learn from these things? Of course you can learn, but when you think of it as the one system that's going to cure all your problems, it's like the one diet that's going to cure all your problems. It never works. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, it's more systemic and holistic. Well, I just want to ask you so many things. So I want to tell people also why I think you are a fascinating human, aside from the thinking that
Thank
you're
you.
sharing, right? Which is also a fascinating thing. But you are a game changer. I mean, you pivoted from being in the corporate world at a moment when your wife at the time was pregnant at the time, like every piece of logic that would have told you not to trust or not to gamble on your own metal and to stay the conservative course and to just do the thing that everyone says you should do, right? You had something in your gut that told you not to. What was that moment like
I
for you?
mean, I'm not a superhuman. I appreciate the compliments, but I took that corporate job because the band didn't work out. It broke up and I needed to work. And I didn't know how long I would be there. It was this big company that they had a division that was doing like an entertainment kind of startup, but the main
Yeah.
company ran call centers. So that entertainment startup folded. But I guess I was smart and hardworking. So they shifted me into the main company and I started to get a nice paycheck. And I'm a hard worker. So I started to do better and better and better. And after a while, you swim in the water, you become a fish or something
You
like
really
that,
do.
because I just became that guy. But I learned a lot the first 3 years and it was really worthwhile. I became an adult, but I was there like close to 8 years. And by the end, I was really, really unhappy. And again, there were worse places to be in. It wasn't so much that like I was working at a corporation. Sometimes I think it's worthwhile working in a corporation. It was that I was working at a company that ran customer service call centers. I didn't really believe in it. I fell into it. I felt that I had certain talents and interests that were very, very strong. And I could see myself being 55 years old and still doing the same thing because it was so seductive, And
I call it the golden
it
handcuffs.
was exactly the golden
Yeah.
handcuffs. It was just enough money. I wasn't rich, but it was
Mhm.
enough money to make it hard to leave, right?
Yeah.
And I was scared, right? Because I had a quote unquote failure with the band, and I wasn't mature enough to say, you know what, I learned from that. I was like, well, I failed, So
Yeah, yeah.
I guess the thing that I eventually I saved money because I got some bonuses and I knew I wanted to leave eventually, so I saved some money up. But I guess the thing with the infant thing is when my baby was on the way and I found out Sally, my wife at the time, was pregnant. Instead of saying, oh no, how hard's it going to be? I sort of imagined my future daughter like saying to her class, my dad is a vice president of solution development. And I didn't even really know what that meant. And it was just like really depressing because I wanted to be a novelist or start a record label or something really interesting and cool. And like, I just had trouble with that vision. Like that really kind of made me feel funny. So I
Well,
started to make my escape plan at that point.
you
Yeah.
just validated everything I've come to know is true of most high performers, and that is they never think they're all that special.
Thank you.
They always say, oh, well, it was just this and that was going on and that was going on.
I'm just saying, I wasn't one of these people who like that you hear about who just like left with no money in the bank or like, I mean, I was at a corporate job I hated for 8 years when I knew I was miserable after 3. So while I am proud of what I did, I also like
backpedaling. It's genius.
It's not backpedaling. I'm saying that like I'm really proud of what I did. I'm also trying to give some credit. I'm trying to encourage members of the audience that like this is not easy to do, and it took me a really long time and a lot of planning and some significant life events to do it. You know,
it's still amazing that you did it.
Thank you. I am proud of myself. I mean, yeah.
So if you were gonna have us, like, I want them to read the book. I'm only halfway through. I want them to read the book. You people read the book.
I'm trying to get it in front of the camera.
Yeah. Like if we were gonna walk away with something that's really the most teachable thing that you would like us to walk away with, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the book's divided into like hype strategies, all the themes. So there's like 12 hype strategies. And there's one hype strategy, it's the first one that you can't do any of the rest of them without. And it's make war, not love. We talked about this a little bit. It's this idea of picking a fight. So what I would challenge you to do, even if you don't think of yourself as what's the word, confrontational, ask yourself what's the point of view, the common like gospel in your industry or in your segment of the universe that everyone just accepts as gospel and that you disagree with. So in your case, for example, it's this idea that like you have to give up your soul to work in a big company. Mm-hmm. Or the opposite, that in order to be happy, you need to throw off the shackles of corporate whatever. Mm-hmm. And from knowing you, I know that you think that that's BS, but everyone says that over and over and over and over and over. So that's a good fight to pick. That whole idea of the bridging, that it's a bridge, not so you don't have to pick a fight with a person. You don't have to pick a fight, and you don't want to be a troll. I wouldn't say you don't have to be a troll. You don't want to be a troll. Yeah. But you want to take bold stands. Almost everything else depends on taking bold stands.
I love it. So do we rent a truck and take a picture of ourselves naked and install it in Piccadilly Circus?
Yeah, that's the second actionable item.
He's got, for one thing, his book is incredibly readable because he's got a zillion amazing examples across the spectrum of like industries and famous people and stuff, and how the most unlikely thing happened that then ended up putting them over the top. It's a hugely readable book.
I love that story in particular. That's a great story.
Cooper. Like they were dying on the vine, and they had a manager who had booked an arena, and they had only sold 200 tickets. They had like a week or two.
Yeah, like in it was like 500 tickets at Wembley Arena in London. They were big in the US, but no one knew who they were in England, and they ended up selling out the arena by doing this prank. And I guess the idea is a lot of times in the book, and if you do end up reading the book, you'll see I'm not telling you to do exactly that. Like people will say, I mean, we were joking about it, but like people will often say, well, I'm an insurance, sales person. How do I take a lesson out of blowing a naked picture of myself up on a billboard? And what I'll say is it's not about that. It's about taking underlying lessons from some of the best promoters of all time, and they can usually be applied to anything, right? Like, so that example is exactly the example you're saying. It's about picking a fight. So the idea there was that what was really savvy about Alice Cooper's manager in the 70s was that he realized that rock and roll is about pissing off parents. Yeah. And most people were trying to get on the cover of Rolling Stone. And he said, I'm not really interested in winning over rock fans. I'm interested in alienating parents, because if I can alienate parents, then kids will love us. So he wanted to get on the cover of Newsweek and have negative stories on the BBC at night about how it's corrupting the youth. And that's what he did. So blowing up that poster was a way of creating a tribe by alienating one group of people. So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, for you, like, I'm not saying you should do this, but for example, you may say, I play in this space where there's a lot of, people who are really into some of the things you're into, yoga, meditation, but even beyond that, crystals and patchouli and this and that. What if you were to say, I want to alienate those people? Mm-hmm. Let me say all the things that those people won't say. Even though that's my world, that place is very crowded. What if I pick a fight with that outmoded hippie mindset, even though I might have a lot of love for that group? You know what I mean? Yeah. The idea is, if I can, because and there are a whole lot of people in the world who would love to hear a message about mindfulness and wellness, but who don't identify with what we used to call granola. You know what I mean? Yeah. And look what, and a lot of people, what?
Those are my peeps.
Yeah, I know. And I'm not saying this is the fight you want to pick, but let's look at what happened. Meditation used to be considered this very, very esoteric thing in the West. Mm-hmm. And now, because of people like Tim Ferriss and Sam Harris, who are very quote unquote rational, scientifically minded people, the entire paradigm has shifted. So that's what I'm saying. There are ways to sort of flip the script by embracing tribalism, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I love it. And I'm so thrilled to have shared you with these folks. So if they want to find you, and if they want to harangue you into offering us all a course on how to learn from these exemplars of hype, how do we find you?
Yeah, thank you for letting me do that. And also, this was really a great conversation, Tevis. I really enjoyed this. So
I love these. I don't like, I want a lot of people to listen to them, because I think that the folks that come on are just really interesting. And I think we all need more conversations about how we live our lives, because it makes the possibilities broader. So I really enjoyed it too. Thank you so much, Michael. But you still haven't told them.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So, I mean, a couple of ways. So, obviously my book, the Hype Handbook, it's mm-hmm. best way to get it is online, obviously, these days. The pandemic's wrapping up, but still, I mean, Amazon or whatever, but it's in bookstores. And if it's not, order it. But, my company is Microfame Media. My website is Michael F. Schein. You see it spelled on there.com. But one of the best ways to keep in touch with me, one of my most fun ways, is there's this thing I do called hypereads.com, like reads a book. And I'm always researching these kind of crazy ideas and reading all of these interesting books. And if I find one that's both helpful and entertaining, I throw them together on a newsletter and send them out. And it goes directly to me. So any responses. So I've built a lot of great friendships and even business relations through that. So please sign up to that if you're interested in these ideas.
Well, I definitely am going to sign up. Meanwhile, guys, I teach this. I teach, how do you give yourself permission to be as fully crazily expressed and still kick butt at what you do in life. So if you want to take some radical success lessons, I'm your girl. Pop me a message. And also, we're going to start another group exploration of the book, probably not until September, because I just think everyone's burnt out. I think everyone wants to chill and watch the grass grow this summer
while running in circles. I don't think anyone wants to sit on their couch anymore, I'll tell you that. Yeah. While drinking a 6-pack with 25 people. Yeah, exactly.
Like talking, breathing in each other's
spitting in people's faces. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Michael, thank you so much. So next week, I believe it's next week, I am having Leilani Henry. She's a woman of color. Her father was on the first expedition to Antarctica.
Wow.
He's a man of color, and he no one's ever talked about him. and she tasked herself with learning about him and has created just an amazing wealth of information. So we're going to, and the journey took her to Antarctica herself. So we're going to explore that. And I can't wait to share her with you as well. So everybody, happy Wednesday night. Michael Schein, thank you so much.
Thank you, Tevis.